On the BetQL guest line is our buddy AJ Perez, reporter for Front Office Sports. AJ kind of brought it to everybody's attention last night that the Senate is moving along with old RFK Stadium. AJ, what up, man? How are you?
Hey, JP, how's it going?
Good, man. Get us up to speed with the Senate moves this morning.
Yeah, we learned last night that the stadium bill is going to come up for a vote in the Senate. This is a few months after the House passed the version. It's going to be taken up by a subcommittee on the Senate on Wednesday, 10 a.m. There's a lot of other bills in front of this subcommittee, which is on the National Park Subcommittee. And looks like I don't see a lot of opposition. So things looking good to get this bill, passed and over to President Biden.
AJ, they were talking about it was going to take a while. They were tearing this thing down brick by brick from the inside out because they were worried about all of the environmental possibilities and things that could happen. Then they came back and they're going to implode this thing. Was that change? Does that have something to do with the possibility that they're leaning towards, let's get this thing ready so they can possibly start building the stadium?
Oh, sorry about that. I kind of lost you there. It's a long process. I mean, tearing that thing down, nothing's been there for many years, and that was a big issue with what to do with the old site. They weren't going to keep it, but it's just been a really long process and slow process of basically taking the RFK Stadium down. Yes, there's a lot of concerns as far as environmental. A lot of materials were used to build that stadium that could be dangerous. But, this is going to be a very long process no matter where it was going. Even if you're putting a stadium next to the now formerly named FedEx, that's the only straightforward path, really.
At this point, all the people I've talked to for months now have said this is going to get through. Like the House passed it, the Senate's going to pass it, Biden's going to sign it. And that still leaves a pretty big hurdle, though, because you got to get a deal done with the city, like the team does, right?
Yes.
What do you think of that portion of what remains? Like, this is a huge hurdle that has been problematic forever. They change the name. Dan finally sells. Voila, you're able to get it through. That said, what do you think the prospects are of the city getting this done, especially after they just committed so much cash to Capital One Arena?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a lot of $500 or so million there. Yeah, that's a big. That's going to be one of the hurdles once DC gets control. If this bill does pass the Senate and President Biden signs it, the next battle is going to be not only public money, but placating the neighbors who for many years haven't had, pretty much since DC United left, there hasn't been much going on there. So now you have to convince them not only you're going to get maybe 10, 11 games, depending on preseason and playoffs a year, maybe more, make the Super Bowl. But that's one thing, but you're also going to have concerts. You're going to have other events. You're going to have more events than are currently at Commander Field because it's going to be a dome stadium almost certainly. So that's going to be, there's going to be some, I'm not saying this is the easy part, but getting this bill out of the House was the biggest hurdle because really the climate in DC right now, on the Hill isn't great. There's not much bipartisanship. Getting it through the House, which is run by the Republicans, with a bipartisan bill, it got out. Pretty much the only opposition for that was from Maryland's Congress people. So and
they're kind of just doing their job. I'm not mad at them on that one. If you're the rep for PG County, you don't want to lose the stadium, so you should vote against
exactly.
it. Who is the dude? We don't give a lot of credit to politicians on here, but there was one dude I remember when their kind of friendship was announced, that people were kind of shocked. It's the dude that brought the bill up in the House. I think he's a Kentucky Republican that became friends with Muriel Bowser.
Yeah, that was a very odd one, especially since
What's his name?
He's the one that I'm blanking right now.
Okay.
Let's see here. And he's also the one who's doing the impeachment of
Comer, right?
Of Biden right now. So it's James Comer. That was kind of shocking. It was like when you have that, when you have somebody, especially with DC and all the fights they've had with this, with this body over their, enforcing laws that the city has passed and kind of going back and, it's going back and overruling the council. That happened earlier this year.
Right.
So this was kind of an odd thing. Yeah, it was kind of odd bedfellows on this one. And obviously you talked about the opposition from Maryland, and which is fine. I think they're fighting for their constituents as well. But you have to remember there's no vote in Congress that DC has. They don't have a true House representative. They don't have not even one senator, let alone two.
Right.
So the question was, after it got out of the House, who's going to help, get this through the Senate. So it looks like, that it's kind of moved past that part now. So, but yeah, it's going to be a long process, and it's going to be another year before we know, and we'll know probably in a few weeks as far as, the exact time they're going to get RFK totally torn down so they can start developing.
But you think if DC gets full control, does any one of y'all think that DC is going to say, "Oh no, now we don't want no stadium"?
I think it's zoned only for a stadium. Like, there's as far as zoning, they can do it. It doesn't have to be a stadium, but yeah, it's they have to set aside a certain part of this land for basically parks, open space, and anything. But they could use it for residential. They could use it for commercial. There's other uses they could do for it. But I think this was passed because of the Commanders.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, totally. I think it's well on its way. Like, this is by far the most momentum this thing is ever going to have, or has had since they moved to Landover. But I'd still only put it, like, if we're in football parlance, I'd still only put it at like the 50-yard line. Like, there's still a lot.
That's right. Yeah.
Like the city, the neighborhood, like now. But that said, this thing didn't move at all for 25 years. And now all of a sudden they picked up a couple first downs, and, there's a little bit. And I think not only the change in ownership, but that this isn't like the Walmart dude that bought the Broncos, right? That dude has no ties to Denver. He just bought an NFL team because buying an NFL team is a smart investment and cool to do. Like, the guys that bought the Skins are from here, have established relationships here. And that's established relationships with politicians and developers and people that can get things done. And I just think it makes a tremendous difference.
Yeah, it does. And not only that, but JP, you were there. You've said on these press conferences, how many times did Josh Harris and other co-owners mention RFK going to games as a kid? There's a sentimental value for fans, for sure, especially older fans. But there's also, for this ownership group, there are many members who were, several members who, grew up in this area and going to these games at RFK. And, that's it. You're not going to bring back the old name, but you could bring back, the site of the stadium, trying to get past, another step past, obviously the former FedEx was built by Jack Van Cook, but, you're kind of moving past Snyder in another way. And I think there's, and as I said on Twitter, or X, sorry, there's no good place to put the stadium. There's all the sites that were considered over the last few years are mentioned down in, Woodbridge, or even here in Loudoun County. There's no good place to put a stadium for in this area, really, for traffic, ease of access, and stuff like that. There's really no good way.
You're right about
there's no good way, and especially public money, maybe not. It's going to be hard anywhere. If all things being equal, I think RFK has a little more of an edge just because it was their former home.
Yep,
totally. I mean, traffic is like, dude. We went to Nats Orioles the other night and sat in traffic getting out of there. Like, on some level, whenever you have an event where, especially a football game, let's say 60,000 people are leaving at one time, it's going to back up a little.
It'll be a problem.
Now, that said, 95 South is the worst stretch of road in America, so that is not the ideal spot. AJ, we got to bounce, man. Thank you for the time,
AJ, appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, JP. Thanks, JP. Thanks, Mitch.